Get your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.
The Lasso tools let you draw either freeform selections with curves or straight-edged selections for irregular polygonal selection shapes. Now the magnetic lasso tool that we'll look at is a really neat selection tool that allows you to snap the selection's border to the pixelated edges of an element in the image that you trace. And this can be very useful for selecting objects with complex, irregular edges set against a high contrast background. Now, because each tool behaves differently, we'll have to look at how you can use each tool in the set on an individual basis. It really depends on the image and the selection you're trying to make. Let's start by examining the Lasso tool. Now, the Lasso tool, to use that, you would simply come over here to the Tools palette. It's located right underneath the eyedropper tool. We'll right-click and we'll see our three lasso tools that we have. We'll just click on the Lasso tool. Now once up in the options bar, we can make our selections. We can select new selection, add to selection, and so forth. We're just going to make a new selection, so we'll leave that selected, and we'll leave the feathering and anti-alias options where they already are. Now, to then create a selection using the Lasso tool, you simply click and drag with the mouse to draw a freehand selection. You trace the outline of the area that you wish to select, making sure that you drag it back to the origin or the starting point. So you simply click and drag to start making your selection. What you'll find as you're using this is that you really have to have a very steady hand. It's not an easy tool to use. Now, as you're using this tool, if you accidentally release the mouse button, what's going to happen is elements will draw a straight line from where you stopped dragging back to the origin point for you. So to start over, just click out of that selection and then click and start again. And you would go all the way around. Again, if you release it, it draws a straight line back. Now, as you're using this tool, if you wanted to draw a straight line as you're drawing, you can hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and click from where you want the line to begin to where you want it to stop to create a straight line. And this will draw straight lines between the points that you click. So you would give it a click, hold down the Alt key, and you can see you can draw straight lines then that way. Release it, and it draws a straight line back to the origin point. Let's go ahead and click out of there. Now, let's take a look at the Polygonal Lasso tool. Again, which tool you select really determines what kind of shape that you're going to make, but it also depends on the type of image that you're working on and the type of selection that you want to make. Let's go ahead and select this image of one of our products, which for this purpose you really want to use the Polygonal Lasso tool because it's designed to make these straight edges that we want to make to select this particular product. To use this, select it in the Tools palette, give it a click. Then up in the options bar we see we have the same types of options. We're going to leave this on New Selection. Now, to do this, all you do is click and then drag to draw the line. Now, as you come to the corners, all you have to do is give it a click and you'll insert an anchor point. We'll go around this curve. We'll click again and create another anchor point. Go down, we can move it around until we get it in the position we want. Give it another click. And with an image like this too, it's a lot easier. If you zoom in, you can make a more precise selection. Click again, all the way around until we get to the origin point. When you do, you'll see a small circle appear at that origin point. Move this over just a little bit. insert that, and when you give it a click then, you'll see that you've made your selection. Now, like the lasso tool, if you hold down the Alt key on your keyboard, you can draw a freehand line until you release the Alt key. So this is the inverse of the behavior of the lasso tool. Now, we talked about the magnetic lasso tool. And to use that tool, again, what it does is it snaps those anchor points to the edge of the selection. Let's go back to our flower image and I'll show you how this works. We'll right click on our lasso tool button and we'll select the magnetic lasso tool. Now, the first few options that we have up here in the options bar are the same. We have our selection type, feathering, and anti-alias. But we have a few other options here. After that, we have first off the width text box. And in this text box, you can type a pixel range from the pointer within which the magnetic lasso tool will look for the border of the item of which it's tracing. Next, we have contrast, and that's the edge contrast, and you can set that as a percentage. What this does is it sets the sensitivity of the magnetic lasso tool to variations in the contrast between pixels, which is how this tool finds the edges of the elements. Now, if you set a higher percentage, that sets the tool to only find edges that sharply contrast with their surroundings. A lower number detects lower contrast variations in color. So it really depends on the image and what you're trying to select as to how high you want to set that contrast percentage. We'll leave it set at 10%. If you're finding that as you're making your selection, you're not getting the desired effect, you can start over and change your contrast. Next to that, we have the frequency located right here. And that allows you to input a number between 0 and 100. A high value increases the frequency with which the magnetic lasso tool sets its fastening points for the edge of the image element as you trace its border. Now, if you use a stylus tablet, you can toggle that button down here at the end of the options bar. If it's selected, the button will have a white or light gray background. If it's on, an increase on the pen pressure causes the edge width setting to decrease. To turn it off, you simply click it again. We're not using a stylus tablet, so we're going to leave that alone. As far as the frequency, we'll just leave that at 57 right now, but again, we can change that if we don't like how many anchor points are being set. Now, once you have all the settings you desire set in place, you can then click and drag the pointer of the magnetic lasso tool around the border of the image element that you're trying to select. As you do this, it will add those anchor or fastening point anchors where it discerns the edges of the object. If it adds a point they would rather not have, you can simply press the delete key on your keyboard to delete the fastening points that you've created as you drag. Then you can back up and redrag the line. Now, you can also, along the way, manually click at any point as you're dragging to manually set a fastening point. You may need to do this in crevices and corners of the image element. To finish the selection, you trace your way back to the starting point, just like we did before, until you see that small circle appear. Then you click there to close the selection. You can also close any selection you've made by double-clicking in any point along the way, which will draw a line from where you double-click back to the origin. So to use this, we'll go into our image here, and we'll start over here. We'll give it a click, and we'll just start dragging around. And you'll see how it's setting those fastening points on our image. Now again, if you don't like the frequency, you can change that. Now see here on that crevice, we might want to set an anchor point, so we could just click to automatically set one. If you don't like the selection that it's making, then you can go back up and you can change the contrast and so forth. And we can just go ahead and quickly make our selection so that you can see how this works. Select all the way around our flower and click, and we'll have made our selection. So if you don't like that selection, again, go up and change the contrast, change the frequency, and you can adjust your selection accordingly.
Like what you see? Pick up your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.